Now, sometimes after we get a response, we want to check a few things. So for example, we want to check if the status code based on 100. We want to check if there's some information in the body. And K6 allows us to write checks or essentially assertions against the response. So in this lecture, I just want to introduce you to the syntax that is needed to write these assertions because it's not probably the most intuitive or easy to get. So I just wanted to break it down in this lecture. So let's go ahead. So what we're going to use here is called check. So we're going to have to import check. I'm going to import check from K6 directly. Now, this time check will need to be between these braces, which is actually a deconstructor. So this is how we can correctly import check. So the syntax for check is a bit different. So essentially check is a function. So we can go ahead and write here check. And there are two parameters that we need to provide. So the first parameter is some data that we want to have access to. So for example, typically we want to pass here the response, but there is some data. In this case, I'm just going to paste a Boolean value, which is simply true. And then we need to pass an object which contains different checks. So I'm going to pass here an empty object, and I'm going to close here the check. Now, typically, we're going to write these assertions on multiple lines. So I'm here between the braces, and I'm going to hit enter so that we can get a bit more space. So inside this object, we have a property name, which will be the name of the assertion, and then essentially a function. So let me show you. For example, let's say the name of this check should be true is true. I'm going to write here true is true. So this is the name of the property because we're in an object here. I'm going to write column, and the value of this property will be a function. So essentially we have here a function, and we're going to get a value. So I'm going to call it here value. And this will be an error function. And here we have access to the value, and we can write something like value triple equal sign. So we're making here a comparison true. So we are getting here the value true. This is the name of the check. Inside this callback function, we have access to this value. And then here we're making a condition. So let's go ahead and run this once to see how it works. And trust me, in the beginning, this feels like super weird. But here's our check. You'll see it here, separated from the metrics report. We're going to get our checks. So we can see here, true is true. So let's say, for example, we're getting some other data. So for example, we're getting here the data false. And I'm just hard coding this for demonstration purposes, but I'm running this again. And what is happening this time is that we're getting here false. This value here is getting actually replaced with false. And then we're checking if false equals true, which it doesn't. So this is why this assertion fails in this case. So this is how the syntax for these checks is a bit weird in the beginning, but after you understand a bit like what is the syntax and how everything comes together, it's going to be relatively easy to write up. Now, there's one more thing I want to go over, and this is the important thing. So you notice here, HTTP, we have imported it like this, but then check, we have these braces here. So why do we need these braces? Let's go ahead and remove these braces from here. I'm going to save the script. You'll see no errors appear. I'm going to run this once again. The request and everything will be executed, but then we're going to get this very weird error here, right? And you'll see here that the checks don't show up. So it's super important how you write these import statements, because in Visual Studio Code, you're not going to get a warning about them. And then you're going to see here something that's not really so helpful. So in case you're getting an error like this, which is a bit like cryptical and doesn't tell you exactly what's the problem, check your imports to see if by any chance they are responsible for this error. In most cases, especially in the beginning, you're going to be facing this a lot.